This episode of The Price of Football is sponsored by Proton Pass. Proton Pass is more than a password manager, it's an identity manager. It does all the things you'd expect a password manager to do, securely generates and stores logins, makes it easy to share passwords, and makes your online experience more convenient and efficient. But on top of all that, it does so much more.
Proton Pass alerts me about weak or reused passwords, as well as accounts where 2FA is inactive to help me take action and improve my online security. While creating accounts with Proton Pass, you can generate an email alias to control who gets access to your email and to know who is potentially selling your data to third parties. It even does something called dark web monitoring, which alerts me if my personal information has been compromised by a data leak. And with Proton Pass, you get the whole Proton suite, including Proton VPN, which allows me to watch geo-blocked content like Football Match when I'm on my travels.
Proton Pass is incredibly easy to use, even for people who aren't that tech savvy. It's so simple, even I can use it across multiple devices seamlessly. Go to proton.me/pass/thepriceoffootball or click the link in the episode description to start securing your digital life with Proton Pass today.
When you think about super successful businesses that are selling through the roof like Heinz or Mattel, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But there's a secret. The business behind the business making selling simple for them and buying simple for their customers. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout as Heinz and Mattel. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/promo.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. I read that, Kieran, so I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing in front of me. On the screen. That bit shouldn't have to be written down after the amount of times we've done this. I should be able to do that. How are you, Kieran?
I'm okay-ish.
I
think I've got the dreaded norovirus. I've had something for the last couple of days, which has made my world into one of ever decreasing circles. I'm not willing to leave the house.
Oh, okay. You're taking me aback there, Kieran, because I only ask you that question because I like hearing you say the word tickety-boo. You're the only person who still uses it, and this is the first time you haven't been tickety-boo. I'm sorry to hear that. It's Newsday, Kieran. I've got some bad news for many of our listeners, in that unfortunately we couldn't find a financial angle to the story about the sweary referee and the ex-manager of Liverpool, because otherwise we would have done the whole pod on that story. But we simply have to stick to real news. And there's a lot of it today, Kieran. And the first two stories are about Manchester City, one general and one specific. And the first one is about the recent court case and changes being made off the back of that.
Yes, so Manchester City and the Premier League both claimed a victory in respect of the associated party transaction rules hearing. The Premier League said, we can sort this out immediately. And sort of 6 weeks later, I believe that there's some form of tentative proposal to change the rules, which I think Manchester City would be pretty happy with, in terms of feeling vindicated with regards to their original grievance. So the first thing is, for people not familiar with the associated party rules, associated party transaction, APTs, it effectively meant that the Premier League had to approve every single sponsorship deal worth more than £1 million in respect of anybody who was vaguely connected to the club. And that vague connection could include geographical connections to the owners. And that's far broader a restriction than you see under the preceding rules. And Manchester City were unhappy. They said they had some potential sponsorship arrangements from Abu Dhabi, which had been delayed. And the main issues under the proposals, and this might appear to be incredibly pedantic, but fair play to the eagle-eyed members of the legal professional who have picked up on this. First of all, in relation to what we refer to as fair market value. So, how much is a painting worth? How much is a piece of art worth? How much is a sponsorship deal worth? Are fairly difficult to prove because they tend to be one-off transactions. And the first thing that we've seen is that the word would has been changed to the word could in relation to how much is a sponsorship, or how much would you expect this sponsorship deal to be worth. It's how much could this sponsorship deal be worth. And I think the reason why that's interesting is that what could be of value to a potential sponsor might be greater than what would be worth to other sponsors, because you might have one sponsor, such as let's take Manchester City and Abu Dhabi based countries sponsors, and Newcastle United and Saudi based sponsors. It could be worth more to a Saudi based sponsor to pay what might be seen to be a premium fee, because they feel they would get additional benefit within Saudi Arabia itself in terms of the local market, in terms of attracting buyers to their products, than on a more global basis. So that's the first thing. Secondly, the Premier League has deleted where it refers to normal market conditions in relation to the value of a sponsorship agreement. So under normal market conditions, a deal from a white label gambling company is worth £10 million. Well, that no longer applies. So again, you could say, well, these are abnormal market conditions. We believe that this particular club offers us a unique opportunity to get into the Premier League, and therefore we're willing to pay a premium for that. That benefits the sponsor, in theory. They get the sponsorship. That benefits the football club. And the third issue, which I suspect will be the one which will prove to be the most contentious, is in relation to the shareholder loans exemption. So what previously has been the case is that if you had a sponsorship deal for anybody connected to the owner, that had to be approved. If you had a loan from an owner, especially if that loan was at zero interest being charged, that was just waved through. And there are, I think, around about a dozen, 13 clubs that get interest-free loans from sponsors. Ironically, neither Manchester City or Newcastle United are within that particular remit, partly due to the nature of Islamic finance, of course, where there's no interest charge, and therefore you tend to have a different relationship between investors and companies. So that's the position we're in at present. I think there is going to be a vote taking place on these rules later this month. Nobody is coming out and saying it's going to sail through. I think a lot of people, in the light of recent events, are reluctant to stick their neck out in terms of any vote and the outcome, given what we've seen globally. And therefore, it's a wait-and-see position. We will have to find out when the white smoke comes out of... In fact, I believe the meeting is taking place at the very same place that we're attending the FSA Awards. Yes, so same. So we have to check to see whether our table's bugged in case Richard Masters is. If he's worked out where we're going to sit, a week later, is there going to be any sort of price of football gossip taking place at the table, which the Premier League need to be fearful of? He's got to watch ourselves, Kevin.
Oh, there's an easier way. Steve Parish is not the biggest bloke in the world. Just hide him under the table. He could, The second Manchester City story, Kieran, involves more fallout, and this is from the tribunal involving their player Benjamin Mendy.
That's right. And we've got a new show coming out tomorrow where we have spent an hour in the company of the one and only Nick DeMarco. And Nick was Benjamin Mendy's KC in respect of this case. So Nick was able to say a limited amount, clearly, in respect of what had happened. And of course, we respect his position. But even so, I thought it was quite revelatory. What has happened is that Manchester City effectively suspended Benjamin Mendy for a significant period of time in respect of certain allegations made against him, which led to a trial. He was found not guilty at the trial. And then his contract expired, and they said, we're not going to pay you a penny in respect of the last 2 years of salary. And Benjamin Mendy said, well, hold on. I've been found in a court of law to have not offended. Why am I therefore being unable to be in receipt of my pay? Because it's not as even if he's been able to go to another club, because Manchester City have kept his registration. So Nick acted on behalf of Benjamin Mendy, and the court ruling is that I think Mendy was on around about £6 million a year. There were a couple of periods of time when he will not be able to claim unpaid salary because there was a period of time during and preceding the court hearing, I think it was preceding the court hearing, when he was effectively given an embargo as to where he could physically travel. So he effectively had to keep bound to rights in his house to a large extent. So that period of time, he would not have been able to be at a football stadium. But for the rest of the time, he was available to train. He was, in his view, available for selection, but the club had continued to maintain the suspension. So it looks as if Manchester City will have to find somewhere in the region of £8.8 million in terms of unpaid salary, which he is now entitled to. And as he's pointed out, he's had to borrow money from other sources during this period of time to actually pay for his legal costs and pay for. He's got other commitments, as we all do, in terms of mortgage, I think child maintenance or whatever. Other people tend to have, and Manchester City have lost this case. So I suspect they'll be less happy about that outcome than perhaps the potential progress in respect of APTs.
I have to say, Nick was able to give us much more information than I thought he would when I asked him about this. I asked him more in hope than expectation, but he was very interesting in revealing about the nature of the contract between Manchester City and Benjamin Mendy. So I'll let our listeners hear that. He also was able to put a bit more meat on the bones of the very first story, the APT story, because he was involved in that. Because one of our listeners asked him the question. It can't be a good outcome to any inquiry or tribunal when both sides were claiming victory, as the Premier League and Man City were. So that hour with Nick DeMarco is a fascinating one, I have to say. He was also off air, Kieran, able to give us some advice in the situation where legally a very small podcast has been nominated for an award but can't possibly win because two very large podcasts, and he says we have a clear legal case here for taking both the Rest is Football and the Guardian podcast to court for abuse of dominance. He reckons we'd probably win that case.
The tyranny of the establishment.
The tyranny of democracy, exactly so. And so hopefully Nick is currently working at least on finding enough to keep Gary Lineker and Barry Glendinning away from the award ceremony. We're going to get some kind of restraining order, so we won't have to look at their faces when one of them inevitably beats, let's face it, a higher quality podcast. Kieran.
I have to say, I listen to both of those podcasts, and I love them both to bits.
Do you? I have to say, I listen to neither of them, Kieran. So because that's an indication of the difference between you and me, Kieran. You're tickety boo, and I'm an old curmudgeon. It's because people say you've got to listen to the Rest is Football. No, I don't. Not now you've told me that. I have my own opinions. I don't need to hear anybody else's half-assed, unbaked. I'm formulating. I've got enough of them myself, Kieran. I go to the Parsons Arms once a week. That's plenty. In the past 2-3 years, Kieran, I've often prefaced the story about Southend by saying this must be good news, and you've shot me down in flames. But this story about Southend, Kieran, must be good news, surely.
Yes, it is. Southend United now have a fresh investor. It's US-based technology entrepreneur Shivas Gulati, and he has joined Justin Rees, who acquired the club from Ron Martin over the course of the summer, and is now in a position to put in fresh money. Southend United, I think, are under new management. They are keen to get out of the National League, which is perfectly understandable. It's a tough league, but sometimes it's just good to see after. Let's face it, I think Southend United fans, every time they were up on our list that we put out on social media, sort of secretly just go, oh no, not again. And we've always said appearing on the show occasionally can be good or bad. Appearing on the show on a regular basis tends to be a cause for concern. But yes, it's fantastic news that they are getting fresh investment. I think it's a sign of faith that somebody, again, a US investor, what US investors are seeing as far as the potential rewards of investing in English football is intriguing. But if I was a shrimper, I would be a very happy bunny.
Good. It was how nice to bring some unqualified good news for a change.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be.
Talking of overseas investment, Kieran, it seems to me a slightly unusual case for ex-investors to go back and reinvest. But this is what's happening at Wolves.
That's right. The majority owners of Wolves, who are a Chinese company called Fosun, they sold around about 6-8% of the club to a company called Peak Six, which was very much, again, a US-based fund which was looking to make money out of soccer. And that deal took place in 2021. And Fosun have now gone back to Peak Six and said, tell you what, we'll buy your shares back off you. And what does this mean? This could mean something, or this could mean nothing. So the nothing could be that there may have been some form of buyback clause, which was triggered in 2024, which could have been an option for Peak Six to force the sale, or might have said a price that if Wolverhampton Wanderers were in X position or Y position, Fosun could buy back the shares at an agreed price. So it could have simply be a contractual option, which one of the parties has now decided to trigger. We don't know that. The other view is that we have certainly seen, as far as Chinese investment in European football is concerned, a broad withdrawal from the market. Chinese companies were very keen a few years ago, and this was on the back of President Xi saying potentially we'd like China to host a World Cup, and if China is going to host a World Cup, one would imagine that the Chinese government would like the Chinese national team to be competitive in it, and therefore investment in European football, knowledge exchange, getting coaches going both directions, getting players going in both directions, could have been advantageous to that objective. There's been a rethink in China in terms of the enthusiasm to host this tournament, and following that rethink, what we have seen is a withdrawal from Europe. Companies have either been selling or trying to sell, and normally there's a sort of a thumbs up or a thumbs down from the government, which tends to be behind these things. Fosun has been a bit of an outlier in this, in that there's been no sense of them wanting to sell the club. Equally, I think it's fair to say there's been a cooling of relations between Fosun and the Wolverhampton Wanderers fan base. Original proposals to expand Molineux to 40,000 plus, they seem to have been shelved. I think fans have been a bit concerned that whilst there was a huge investment in terms of talent in season 22-23, some of which were connected to a well-known super agent, that has very much declined over the course of the last 3 to 4 windows. Clearly, Wolves fans aren't happy with where they see the table, or they see their club in the table at present. And if I was Fosun, and if I was looking to sell the club, it's a lot easier to go to a potential buyer and say, would you like to buy 100% of Wolverhampton Wanderers, as opposed to, would you like to buy 91% of Wolverhampton Wanderers? And by the way, we've got these American investors who might have different objectives. You know from your own experience at Palace, is that if you have a diverse shareholder base, especially if that is reflected in the boardroom as well, and I don't think this is the case at Wolves, that it can mean that the decision-making process is slowed down. So I'm not saying 2 + 2 = 5 here, but if I was Fosun and I was looking to sell the club, being able to sell the whole thing, as opposed to, it's a bit like if you're selling a house. If I'm selling my house here and it's just me and the Baroness living there, that's one thing. If I'm trying to sell the house, and by the way, we've got a tenant in in the spare bedroom, there'd be fewer buyers interested in acquiring the property under those circumstances. So therefore, I might have a word with the tenant and say, "Do you like to consider moving on?"
It's probably better to get Uncle Terry to have a word with them.
That's true.
You're so good with numbers, mind. You probably could make 2 and 2 make 5, couldn't you? The 2 famous footballing cities, Kieran, have had a big cash injection from their owners this week.
Yes. First of all, we've got Norwich City. Now, Norwich made pretty substantial losses in season 23-24. And that was in their final year of receipt of parachute payments. So 24-25 is going to be a challenging financial year for Norwich City. In my view, they are one of the more sensibly run clubs in terms of how they budget. And we've had people from Norwich on the show, and I've been very impressed with their level of professionalism. Since the end of the Delia regime and the replacement with Mark Atanasio, what we have seen is certainly a lot of investment from the new investor. But what intrigues me is the club has just issued some shares, and the terms of those shares just seem a little bit strange. So first of all, they've got what we refer to as preference shares as opposed to ordinary shares. And people unfamiliar with the difference, an ordinary share is 1 share, 1 vote. So if I own 10 shares, I get 10 votes. If I own 1 million shares, I get 1 million votes. But the new shares which have been issued, and it's not been clarified as to who these shares have been issued to, are what we refer to as preference shares. Now, the nature of a preference share is, first of all, they don't tend to carry any voting power. But secondly, in order to compensate for that, they come with a agreed level of dividend payment should dividends be paid. And looking at these new shares, there's £13.3 million worth of shares being issued in one particular tranche. And then there's $56 million. And I'm going, why would a company based in the UK, which is a PLC, why would it be issuing shares in dollars? That seems to me to be something unusual. And then when you take a look at the terms of these shares, they come with an 11% dividend. Now, what that means is that for every £1 worth of share or $1 worth of share, you would get 11 cents or 11 pence if dividends are paid. And I stress, dividends are not normally paid, so this shouldn't be an issue. The reason why they're called preference shares is that they get first dibs. So if the company feels it's got enough money to pay money to shareholders, it's paid to the preference shareholders first and then to the ordinary shareholders. And that's the benefit you get from being a preference shareholder. The price you pay is that you don't get any democratic entitlement in terms of being able to vote. So it just seems to me, looking at it for what is ultimately a relatively small company, and that's not a criticism of Norwich City, compared to what you see in the corporate world and the trillions of dollars worth of value that some companies have, this does seem to be quite complicated. We've now got 5 sets of preference shares as well as the ordinary shares. That's a bit strange. So that's Norwich City. The second company that we're looking at is Birmingham City, and this is a joyride for Blues fans at present. They're having an absolute whale of a time, and it looks like around about another £3.9 million is being paid by shareholders. Who those shareholders are, we don't know. The important thing is that money does count towards the equivalent of FFP, PSR, whatever you want to call it, as far as League One is concerned. And we've also got the fact that Birmingham City have acquired a data analytics company. Now, whether these shares are being issued to the owners of the analytics company, we don't know. But the fact that they've set up an analytics company themselves is intriguing. So there's an awful lot taking place in respect of Birmingham City, and it's not dull. The club's owners are clearly incredibly ambitious, and for Blues fans who've, let's face it, they've been through the doldrums for a long period of time. You've only got to look at the attendances for third tier matches, and it's an exciting time.
Yeah, we've heard a lot already today, Kieran, about foreign investment coming in, and here's some foreign investment going out at Swansea City.
Yes, Swansea City were acquired, I think it's around about 2015, 2016, by 2 US investors, Jason Levine and Steve Kaplan. And I think they paid around about £110 million for Swansea. Swansea were a Premier League club at that point in time. They've now decided to move on. The word on the street is that they've not suffered a significant loss, which could be interpreted that they made a loss by some. I think what's intriguing is that this is effectively a management buyout, because the new owners of Swansea City, it's going to be Andy Coleman, who's the current chairman, again, ironically, a US investor called Brett Cravat, who is on the board, and Nigel Morris is a UK investor, but again, seems to be sort of got an existing shareholding with an existing relationship with Swansea City. So, fans have been waiting for a bit of a turnaround since they were relegated. It's not really happened. We spoke at length on the listener question in respect of Stoke City a couple of days ago, and that's provoked quite a reaction in Stoke, in the local newspaper, the Stoke Sentinel, which is good. People ask questions, and we do our best to answer them. So and it wasn't criticism of our evaluation of what's happened to Stoke since then. It was just somebody's actually put it into hard numbers.
Yeah.
So again, you've got to ask yourself, why are people wanting to buy into football? It's that scarcity factor. It's that potential lottery win. If everything's in alignment at Swansea City and they have a good season and they get back into the playoffs and back to the Premier League, and that's what appearing to be attracting to them. I think they're also concerned that there's at least one other club in Wales that is particularly high profile at present, which appears to be getting all of the attention. So this is a way to perhaps re-establish Swansea as being a bit more of a top dog than Wrexham. It's going to be, it could be intriguing. I know Palace fans were saying at the end of last season, you were on fire at the end of last season. We could be in Europe in 25-26. Europe could be Swansea, Wrexham, and Cardiff.
Moving on. Did you get that invitation to this Stoke podcast that you were so clearly angling for last week?
I got invited to two, I think you'll find.
And Brett Gravatt, that's a strong name, isn't it? Brett Gravatt.
That is a cracking name.
I'm sure Roger Moore would have played a character called Brett Gravatt at some stage, wouldn't he? We haven't spoken about the FA of Ireland for some time, Kieran, so you'd kind of think maybe things have calmed down a little bit. But just as you think that, no.
No, and it's not good news. The FAI has been through a tough period of time due to poor governance, due to overspending, due to effectively having to be bailed out by the Irish government. And it looks like as part of the deal, they've told the FAI, you've got to streamline. So FAI staff, according to this story, are bracing themselves after learning that a voluntary redundancy process is on the cards. And this has to go down for bad decisions made at the top. And I've said, doesn't matter what your business is, opportunities, resources, decision making. There have been people historically at the head of Irish football who have not acted in the best interests of Irish football or the FAI as an independent body. And unfortunately, the fallout from that is going to be, as usual, felt by the people who tend to be the good people. We get to know people from UEFA and FIFA and the Football Association due to sort of where we are on the periphery of the football world. And they all come across as decent, fantastically dedicated football fans. But as we saw at Manchester United, when it comes to job losses, it tends to be those on the coalface that get the worst of it.
Good news, Kieran, for Gianni Infantino. We always like to bring good news to Gianni Infantino where we can. He finally found a sponsor for the FIFA Club World Cup, Kieran. They may be a household name somewhere. They aren't in my household, so I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it because people will laugh at me like when I try and pronounce DAZN, which apparently is DAZN. Well, if they just spell it like that, if you want to call it pronounced DAZN, spell it DAZN. So who are these people, Kieran?
Well, it's AB InBev, who are alcohol. I've just shortened the. It's Bush. It's Busch Gardens, isn't it? The Busch Gardens people, who are more commonly familiar with various forms of Budweiser type products. They have a very long-standing relationship with FIFA, which I think was a wee bit soured in the most recent World Cup when, at about 24 hours notice, they said, you can't sell your product, by the way. So we're the official beer of the World Cup? Yes. But we can't sell beer at the World Cup? Yes. That's fine, says Jenny. So they have been connected to FIFA for many a year. And I think if this does go ahead, then it will very much be a political decision. They want their contract to be renewed to be the official beer of the FIFA World Cup in terms of countries. And keeping on the right side of Gianni Infantino is one way of achieving that. There is one sponsor, to be fair, for the competition, and that's the Chinese company Hisense. And this is where I get very confused, because if the reports are correct, Hisense are paying $90 million to sponsor the FIFA Club World Cup. Now, this is a competition which is going to last 4 weeks. And as far as I'm aware, there's relatively few markets where there's any degree of enthusiasm for this. Now, to put $90 million in context, that's more than Manchester United earn in a full year from their front of shirt sponsor, who's getting 12 months of a football club, which, whether you like Manchester United or dislike Manchester United is news. So how they've managed to come up with and agree a figure of $90 million for a tournament which is up there with the Confederations Cup in terms of fan enthusiasm does seem to be very strange. But I think it is further indication that FIFA is becoming more and more of a global political body than a footballing body.
Our penultimate story, Kieran, is also about the Club World Cup. And frankly, if you want any more damning indictment of the pointlessness of this tournament, this story is it.
Yes, this is a fascinating story. There was talk a few months ago that the FIFA Club World Cup was going to be incredibly attractive to sponsors and broadcasters and fans and clubs. And indeed, there was talk of it could be worth a minimum of $50 million. $50 million for 4 weeks' work is pretty attractive, even for a club the size of Real Madrid. But it looks as if these numbers, which were being quoted, haven't necessarily been inked into contracts, because it now turns out that Real Madrid have decided they're not going to budget for any income from the tournament. So from a Real Madrid point of view, that actually now becomes a loss-making tournament, because Real Madrid going out on a pre-season tour is worth somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 million euro. So that is, again, further evidence that I think FIFA have not necessarily covered themselves with glory in relation to this tournament. You add on to the fact that they've failed to deliver in terms of the computer game, which when Electronic Arts decided that FIFA were asking for too much money and decided to go and publish their game alone, FIFA said, don't worry, we've got one up our sleeve. Well, there's no sign of the game coming out their sleeve. And again, we're talking an 8-figure annual rights deal for the FIFA name, which has gone there. So that is leaving a bit of a hole in FIFA's finances as well.
Well, they're probably discovering, Kieran, that it's actually harder to knock a game up than you'd imagine, really. It's all very well sitting in a meeting, Gianni going, it can't be that difficult, can it?
I remember sensible soccer. That was...
Talking of sensible soccer, Kieran, are Barcelona in the Club World Cup?
No, they're not.
Oh, that's a shame.
Because they've not won the they've not won the Champions League.
That's a shame, because they would have budgeted about $2 billion.
Yes.
They're making loads of money out of this terrible tournament. Our final story, Kieran, I'm slightly uneasy about this one, because we spoke about Forbes bringing out their list of the 10 most valuable players in the world, and now we've got a list of the 100 most valuable players aged under 21. I thought there's something slightly tacky about bringing this list out of wealthy kids, essentially, isn't there?
Yes. I mean, to be fair, the Forbes table was indicative of the highest earners. Now, this table, which is put together by this is the CIS laboratory based in Switzerland, and its output is held.
That doesn't sound at all sinister, Kieran. No. The laboratory said, "Wow, okay."
These guys, I must confess, I hold in very high regard in terms of the amount of background work that they do. So yes, they've taken a look at players aged under 21. Number one most valuable player is Yamal at Barcelona, followed by Garnacho at Manchester United, and third place is Zaire Emery at PSG. So all of those players, I think, worth around about or more than €100 million. The club with the most players in the 100 most valuable players aged under 21 is Brighton and Hove Albion.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Got 6 players aged under 21 in the top 100 players. It's Tony Bloom's secret sauce 11 or splendid 6. When I read that, I thought that can't be right, and I went through. Oh, okay. Not only have Brighton got the youngest manager in the Premier League, they've got the most valuable under 21s as well.
Tony Bloom's secret sauce sounds even more sinister, Kieran, I have to say. Well, that will give us something to talk about, Kieran, when we're doing a gig in Brighton on Friday night. I'll add that to the list of things that Brighton are doing really well. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution as well, it's very kind of you, and that will get you access to our chat community and our regular quizzes, and you can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, and you can find us on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to buy our book, you can find details on our website, priceoffootball.com, or get yourself down to an independent bookshop. We will be back tomorrow, in fact, with our Nick DeMarco. It's not even an interview, it's a Q&A, and we'll be back on Tuesday with our questions pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you, as always, to everybody at Patreon and the way that you support the show. If people do want to see us in a slightly different environment, there's still, from what I understand, I think it's about 4 or 5 tickets remaining for the show that we are doing in Brighton Unitarian Church on Friday the 15th. So tomorrow, if you've listened to the show when it comes out, we're delighted to say that Paul Mullen, who's the Brighton Chief Operating Officer, who started his career many years ago at Sheffield Wednesday as an apprentice under Howard Wilkinson, he's kindly agreed to be a guest on the show. We've got PC Darren Balcombe, who, if you're an England fan and you've watched England play away, the chances are you may have bumped into Darren. He does his brilliant job. He's also the Brighton Community Police Officer in terms of matches, just to sort of give an explanation as to how the football club works with the police force in terms of, as a business operation as well. So we are looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to seeing all those people, and to also, most importantly, to raise money for Samaritans. And on a slightly more serious note, it was depressing to see that in 2023, it was the highest year for suicide in this country this century, and lots of people are going through some really hard times. And all we can say on a personal note, and I've not mentioned this before, my son's girlfriend killed herself in November 2023, and I know what impact it had on the people that loved her, and that's why we're doing things like this.
Yeah, bye, everybody.
The price of football. The price of football.